Welcome to Praxus Project. If you're a CEO, senior leader, or board member navigating the fast-evolving world of business, you have found your hub of actionable insight and no-nonsense discussion.
Welcome to Praxus Projects. Today, we're going to be looking at an article from Deloitte published mid-January 2026 called "The Year Ahead, North American CFOs Reveal Their Top 6 Expectations for 2026." This was a poll of 200 CFOs at North American companies that had at least $1 billion in revenue. And the top 6 priorities for 2026 were: number 1, finance transformation through digital; number 2, a commitment to AI; number 3, deploying AI agents; number 4, adapting to buyer behavior; number 5, internal talent development; and number 6, increased AI activity. So those are the top 6 priorities. I think one kind of key interesting thing to note is that the CFOs seem to be obsessed with AI agents, but 52% of them admit that their data quality is a problem. Are we building autonomous skyscrapers on quicksand is an interesting question.
I thought one of the things that stuck out to me was what was noticeably absent, which is inflation and supply chain. So I think the past couple of years, my world, everybody I've talked to, that was one of the biggest concerns. So it looks like overall, the shift from the financial perspective of these companies is less about external factors and more thinking internally. So internally, I myself am really going 100% in thinking about how to automate everything with the use of AI and with the use of some agents. Anybody that's used Copilot, which is really great for Microsoft, the capabilities have really enhanced in the past year. Just a year ago, it was not good. Everybody was really still leaning on ChatGPT or Claude or whatever else that was out there. I think there's going to be a really fast mover into improvements. And I think, just even a couple months from now, all of these tools will be even better. So I think that's something to look out for. The next thing I'd say is, as we're finalizing, we've rolled out our budgets and then we're looking to see how we're performing in Q1. The biggest concern is I have also is the consumer behavior that gets mentioned. And, it seems like everybody's positive. We're not thinking about all these threats, but everybody's also still cautious. So I think that's interesting. And I don't know if we'll find out in Q1, but it'll be interesting to see how our reforecast and how the year shakes out.
Love that. I think Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, had a blog post on, I think, December 29th. And in his blog post, he kind of challenged people to move beyond the concept of slop for AI and to think of AI as a bicycle for the mind. And so I think as these tools improve and our abilities to leverage those tools in our processes, we can think about how do we do our job? How do we become more efficient? How do we become more productive? How do we become more efficient in our roles? And I think there's a huge, interesting opportunity on the finance space. And then Valerie, from like an internal investment perspective, are you seeing and hearing people talk about ROI on AI investment in a different or new or more specific way in 26?
One, they were talking about M&A interest, which I thought was really interesting because that's the first time that this has been mentioned. But investment in capabilities and tools and AI in itself is something everybody's been doing. So I was just on a seminar yesterday, and I think I mentioned to you guys I was in the CFO for WFF, and there was not one topic that was not about AI. And the Microsoft US CFO was actually there and said, it takes 2 days to close, barely a day to close. He's using all these tools. And so, we were all secretly taking pictures and how is that possible? And I think there is going to be a lot of investment in all the internal capabilities and seeing how we can automate this, because the reality is the process is ripe for disruption. And so if the tools are there, it's reintegrated, the more all CFOs can have a lot heavier lift and more mental capabilities on just thinking about how to plan and be more strategic.
Yeah. And as you think about people who would come to you in your role, asking for additional funding for AI tools, I feel like in 25, CFOs are sort of it's fine. We're going to pay for it. Everyone needs tools to get exposed, start playing in the sandbox, so to speak. But are you seeing a shift from a CFO perspective to say, yes, you can have the budget, and I expect that you're going to come back to me with proof that this investment in this tool benefited the bottom line.
Yeah.
Are we there yet, I guess is the question.
We're kind of approaching that. So we have, if we every individual and department's current tech stack, if you will, of their AI tools, a lot of it seems to be overlapping. And not too long ago, we've had some people say, oh, I don't really need this because I'm actually using. So it is healthy to rethink. And I think as this year progresses, we'll become a lot smarter and sharper on how we articulate what each tool does in terms of an ROI. Because right now it feels very slop-like. Feels like we just have a big mixed bowl of all these tools. Personally, I've started organizing all of our tech stack, if you will, on the actual process. So I think we'll get better and sharper. And with that, we'll become smarter. And I expect everybody to become smarter, or at least I'll hold people to be accountable and start articulating what each tool does. And so I think we'll get there fast.
I've seen that too in the legal context, more, I don't know, AI platforms, more AI use cases. As they talk about it, they talk about specific uses, right? So like using Claude for diligence in like M&A deals and how that can cut down on the time. You know, what takes days, weeks, months sometimes can now take hours. And that they're designing it for that, or at least that's how they're positioning it. So like individual use cases, I think is going to change, you know, moving away from slop. What I thought was interesting in this article was CFO sentiment has risen. So in 2025, the top concern was enterprise risk. In 2026, it's now transforming tech transformation and efficiency and a greater appetite for deals. So, you know, that's a good indication, I guess. Like CFOs are not as worried about risk and looking to move faster and do more deals. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, and now it sort of seems like we're going to have two colliding interests, particularly when you think about M&A, because M&A is never easy. It's never been easy, and maybe with AI it gets easier, but I'm not sure it does. And so the tax on an organization, regardless of kind of where you're at on the seat of, are you the merger, are you merging, are you being acquired, are you acquiring, regardless of your role in that transaction, it's a heavy lift across the organization. Simultaneously, there's just this wave of innovation and transformation that we're trying to do internally within organizations to become more efficient, more productive around the AI tools and AI processes and agents. So the collision of those two in 26 feels like that could be, could be problematic for a lot of organizations.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, Barry, because as you were talking about it, I was thinking about just, the complexity, like the human element of M&A activity, and trying to integrate organizations or get organizations to work together. Yes, we might be able to get the deal done faster, but we're still, at the end of the day, having humans work together differently. So maybe that's a role for HR to how can you speed that up, or at least provide support for, this deal happened much faster than it ordinarily would have. Now we're in a new reality where we have to work together differently or work in different ways. We're still people, and that takes time. It takes, we talked about psychological safety in a prior episode. Like, how do you help foster that in an environment where we're moving a lot faster?
Valley, thoughts on M&A activity as being a kind of on a direct collision course with AI transformation?
That actually is really interesting. I didn't think about that. So M&A is a lot of work, and as someone that's gone through the process, when you acquire a company, you think it's simply A plus B equals C. It's like A, massage, B, massage, then C, like let's try and it's a lot of work to get everything to work in unison. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But it's not as simple as like combining entities and combining forces and then thinking your revenue is going to just be an add-on. So it's a lot of work, and getting the deal done is also a lot of work. But that's something I think everybody's going to have to be prepared for. We're going to be talking a lot about this year. I think interest rates are going lower. The markets look pretty favorable. So it's going to happen. And, we're going to hear more about this throughout the year, I think, which is good. I think these are positive movements and these are positive shifts. But if we layer in this AI component, I think it'll be really interesting. I think it'll help from the deal perspective. So, anybody that's done a deal, it's a lot of it's a lot of the due diligence part of it will definitely get faster. So that will get easier. Managing of all the legal paperwork and everything involved in terms of agreements and contracts will get easier. It'll be interesting to see, since I don't know who's gone through this process several times to have any sort of pattern recognition, what it would look like in a post AI world in the M&A capacity. It'll be really interesting to see.
Yeah, that's a great point. I was at a conference last night, and there were a couple of folks in the legal space who were talking about AI tools and services for in-house organizations to streamline a lot of the legal activity that takes place. And I would think too, Valerie, you talked about Copilot, Microsoft, and the analytics and modeling, projecting a impact that some of the AI could also help expedite, I would think, in that space as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk about talent. One of the things that was interesting for this article was, and I'm curious sort of how these topics come up, but it was interesting to see the CFOs talk about saving money by promoting internally, which was I don't know, seemed a little bit contradictory, because I didn't also see a ton of how are we investing in the development of that talent so that it is value add to promote internally, because there is so much happening from an AI innovation perspective that I don't know, it was just an interesting part of me questions like, is that a real solution to save money by promoting internally and not bringing in any outside? I don't know, Marcus.
Yeah. I mean, I'm curious what money you think you're saving. Are you saying we are going to promote internally and therefore we don't have to provide market competitive salaries because we already have the talent here? Or are you saving the efficiency time of doing a job search, interviews, onboarding, getting someone up to productivity, because there's certainly a cost associated with that. But it's one that I don't think organizations necessarily talk about or appreciate as much. We want to buy the talent and plug them in and let them go. I mean, it's going to take a while for someone to get up to peak productivity.
Yeah. And I think we've talked in a previous episode that bringing in like superstars kind of across different verticals doesn't necessarily equate to success. So I don't know that it's also necessarily the case that you go, hire 5 great experts in X, Y, and Z, and then you're automatically going to get there. To your point, there's a lot of organizational knowledge, intellectual capital that's contextually appropriate or specific to the company that takes some time to onboard and learn what works, what doesn't, what's been done, what hasn't been done, all those sorts of aspects. It's not just a flip of the switch kind of thing, but neither is promoting internally to take someone who's been great at one thing and expect them to perform at another level and then throw kind of this whole AI innovation piece on top of that. The other interesting thing, and this comes back, Valerie, to kind of an ROI point of view. I'll reference Satya Nadella's post again. He used the term model overhang, that we have these models, and whether it's Claude or ChatGPT, OpenAI, Pilot, that are incredibly powerful and robust, and yet the vast majority, I think, of users and organizations who have access to one or multiple of these tools, they're not really leveraging them anywhere near their full capacity. So we've got these powerful tools that are being suboptimally leveraged in the organization, which is impacting the ROI of those investments. So again, to me, it seems like a miss if I'm thinking about 26 and where the technology is just continuing to advance at a really rapid pace. How are we bringing people up the skill trajectory to eliminate that model overhang? So we're really, truly getting people to leverage these tools for their full capacity. Anyway, sort of an interesting.
So we at our company really lean into, it's almost like another 6-year out of college person on our team. It's a really powerful, and we meet weekly on projects to really sharpen how we use this. We're a tech platform, so we have a lot of people internally that will really spend a lot of time just consuming every sort of content, educational video that's out there. They're probably, I'd say, a year ahead on what I've seen others know how, in terms of like operating and explaining how to use it day to day. And so we really lean into it. The model, so in terms of the model overhang, it's interesting because I think this kind of ties back to the talent conversation. So on the talent side, I think what's not being said is people get promoted because the people underneath will go away. And that's the savings. I mean, I think that potentially is what the savings could be if I'm reading between the lines. So with that, you spent time. So if you think about these managers that get promoted, you spent a lot of time managing people instead of thinking about strategy or thinking about anything more forward looking or value add. And you're like managing the problem of the day, probably 80% of your day. So with that going away, it will free up a lot of managers' time to just simply manage agents or manage a process or manage other people that are still there on how to think about managing a process or managing a tool.
Yeah, I love that. Love that. Marcus, any other thoughts?
No, just that was, I didn't think about it that way, Valerie, but I'm glad you did. No, I'm saying I think you're right. Like, you do spend a lot of time. I mean, usually if you get a promotion, that means you're going to have more people under you, which means you need to devote more time to managing those people. And that's a different skill set than, the individual discipline that you're working in. So I hadn't thought about that, but that's a really good insight.
Yeah.
Another aspect of model overhang too, I think is, and this is a little bit of kind of operational strategy, is having organizations shift from thinking of AI improvements or efficiency gains in kind of isolated aspects of what you're currently doing today, right? So like, it feels like a lot of companies are still saying, oh, here, we do this process of A through, let's deploy AI to make each one of those steps of A through N more efficient and more, create increased productivity. The next phase we quickly have to get to, if we're not there already, is that the right process? Like, how do we rethink our entire workflows as opposed to just layering AI on top of the workflows? I think is another interesting level. And how do we bring in the talent to do that? Again, if we're just promoting from within, it's really hard to break out of the frameworks and constructs that we have when we're in an organization to think outside the box. It's really hard. Not impossible, but it's hard. And bringing people that are coming from the outside that have a different point of view, have seen it done a different way, are coming in with a fresh perspective, a fresh set of eyes. So maybe that's consulting, maybe bringing folks from the outside to help kind of lead, facilitate, and push people, or maybe it's strategically bringing in, one person that's kind of overseeing some of that revamp and reassessment. But anyway, that transition from how do we truly reinvent what we're doing overall from an overall process versus just let's make steps A through N more efficient.
Yeah, I think along the same lines, Barry, not just more efficient, but, how can we improve the customer experience or the client experience or the employee experience?
Yeah.
You can go faster, but can it get better too?
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah. What's our success objective?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So key takeaways or advice for people listening. Valerie, we're going to start with you, and CFOs or execs listening. What's your advice to them?
I think overall, overarchingly, sentiment is cautiously optimistic. We've turned a corner from being concerned about unknown external factors to now turning inward, where we're focusing on automation, we're focusing on team transformation and how to really lean into this digital revolution of AI and AI agents. More to come. And, I'd say be a relief to be taking a breath from all past couple of years and everything that was out there that we really couldn't control.
Marcus, advice, tips for folks?
I think, yeah, good spot to be in, right? A lot of exciting opportunities, but also think about how these things will impact and benefit your customers and your employees.
Yeah. Perfect. And I think just, it's hard to come up with one thing, but I think to me, it's just, continue to leverage your CFO and AI automation and partnership to make sure that you're building value into the organization, to your point, Marcus, whether it's internally, whether it's externally, whether it's process oriented. And then I think the last thing is the last thing I'll say is if there's a uptick in M&A for 2026, it is because there has been a backlog of opportunities and appetite. And so if that's true, and 26 is going to be a year with a lot of M&A activity, if you're an organization that is in that space of looking to acquire, looking to be acquired, wanting to merge, to sort of double your efforts, to just be aware of the collision course of M&A activity and AI transformation, just know that that's going to complicate it versus what you may have done in the past, and just to keep an eye on that for your people, for your organization, for your customers. All right. Well, thanks for listening. Give us a like and a subscribe below. We would really appreciate it. Let us know your thoughts on what 2026 is going to look like from a finance, operations, AI perspective. We'd love to continue the conversation. So, and until next time, we'll see you on Praxus Project.
Yeah.